Good afternoon, Zach. How are you?
I'm well, Dario. And guys, I think as you can tell, Dario and I are still wearing the same clothes as the last conversation we had, which means either neither of us know how to do laundry or we did this on the same day. Uh, but Dario and I had some good thoughts and just wanted to kind of expound upon and get some more information out to you guys that we didn't get to cover on the last episode. So
Yeah, I think yet again, just real quick, some of the goals that we have with the videos, use them in LinkedIn format. We do post some to YouTube and a couple other areas as well. But we had to cut ourselves to 15 minutes for LinkedIn. And I think Zach and I, as soon as we ended, kept divulging and talking and said,
yes.
this is probably some information that some people will see valuable. And so we said, hey, let's kind of extend it. So I guess we can maybe just call this backups 2.0 or an extension. But
Yeah.
I think Zach, you were kind of just touching on how a lot of these individual things, you can put them in a box, but for your business, you kind of need them all, and they all kind of intermix, and things become from the cloud world,
Mhm.
from the physical world, affect the cloud world, and back and
Yeah.
forth, and how companies are really having to manage some of these things. So I think you had some great things there.
Yeah, yeah, like I mentioned, and this is before camera came back on, guys, everything's just so intertwined anymore. We had talked a little bit last go round about, uh, the insurance piece. How are you protected if you're in some sort of disaster or theft or something like that? And then Dario and I started kind of expounding on, okay, well, if you do have to go remote, as a lot of companies have learned this year, how do you do it? What pitfalls are there? Which also led back to, well, that goes back to insurance piece too, because then, cyber insurance is kind of a new thing. Your physical insurance is a thing, and there are a lot of gaps where people may not understand what does what. And at the end of the day, the insurance company is probably going to go, well, you've got to be compliant in order for us to do these things. So everything is tied together in a weird way with technology these days. And so, like Dario mentioned, when it comes to cloud hosting, where are your backups located? Can you reproduce a test? Can you physically touch them? Are they in a compliant facility, or were they in somebody's basement? These are things to be mindful of in these type situations, but really in any type situation as a business owner.
Yeah, I think the insurance is a piece that we're really starting to see and understand. And I mean, we've seen it from our end and got it, but I think companies are really starting to understand what it means to be compliant and set up
Yeah.
appropriately. We won't go too far into the insurance piece. Like I said, we kind of want to keep it open, big topic. But while you're on it, just keep in mind, if you were to buy homeowners insurance and your roof had a hole in it, they're probably not gonna give you insurance at first. But then if you did file a claim and somehow got through all that, they probably would not honor it because you did not have proper maintenance or proper,
Well,
you know, that.
probably more appropriately stated that if somebody broke into your house and stole everything from it, you would think your insurance would cover it. Well, when insurance finds out that you left the front door open with a big sign on it that says, hey, come on in, they then deny that. And that's kind of what we're looking at with the technology stuff these days, that you have to take reasonable action to try to prevent these things from happening. Ignorance is no longer bliss.
Yeah, and so put real life application and piggybacking off the backup video, it came from the conversation of, let's say in Louisiana, somebody has their server in their basement, yet again, and this catastrophe happened. We had mentioned that maybe the physical server, the hardware itself,
Mhm.
would be covered. Maybe, if you had something for it.
Yeah.
But what about the data and the information on there? And I think that's the piece that, really stems from where we were saying, did you even take an appropriate measure? Is this, let's just say you are a lawyer, you are working from home and you have the server there. Are you even meeting an appropriate standard to host this, to hold the server in your basement, right? There's so many factors that go into that, like we mentioned in the previous video. And if you haven't check back over to that one so you can see some of the physical stuff that we had mentioned around security for the server itself.
Absolutely. And to your scenario there, yeah, there are certain things for attorneys, 7 years that you have to keep files for clients. If all you had was an on-location server that got flooded out or got damaged somehow, whether a tree fell on it, are you in compliance or out of compliance then? Does the bar association look at you and say, hey, you didn't take reasonable care, is usually how they look at it. So you want to make sure just from that standpoint that all of your data is backed up. But if you don't have anything, like Dario said, if you've got your business insurance, your general liability policy, they'll replace the server, provided you've got enough coverage. But they can't replace the data. They don't know what the data is. The server, they can say, oh, that's a Dell, or that's a Lenovo, or that's a HP. They know what that was, but they don't know what data was on there. And there's almost virtually no way for them to replicate that data. You're the one that has to do that as the business owner. And that's why we always say have three, because you can have one or two go down and still have that third one. I mean, data is just the lifeblood for businesses these days. And to go without it, I think we're seeing everything from Colonial Pipeline not have it, that they had issues just getting oil to people and gas to people. You pretty much can cease operations without the data anymore. So that is the more critical piece. So be mindful when looking at the insurance policies that this may not cover the data piece. And what does that really do to your business if you lost that? It's great you've got the computer back, but what do you do without the data?
Yeah. When we mentioned things like, let's just say it wasn't even pertinent data. It was just data that you needed for your team to operate. What would you lose from an expense standpoint of having a team of 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 people sit around twiddling their thumbs for a week? I mean, who knows? What does that cost you? Now let's say it's important information and your clients have sensitive information with you. What does that mean for your clientele base? Are you losing clients as a result of not having some form of backup or some form of redundancy there to show them?
Well, and that's a big piece of it. What does it do to your credibility with your client?
Credibility, yeah.
There's really no way to put a number on reputational harm. And how do you win that confidence back? That's a big piece to this, because if we've got a client that turns around and says, hey, did you get that email? No, sorry. There's only so many times you can say that, we had a technology issue before they start going, well, okay, how do you not invest in technology since it's causing you so many issues? And it starts ruining your credibility in the business community. And so we don't want that. We want strong small businesses, make sure that we're doing all the right things here. But yeah, that's the one that I look at and go, it kind of does irreparable and almost unquantifiable damage.
Yeah. And, in that same notion, we're always talking negatively, but let's talk positively. Can you win some new accounts based on having a better setup? We've talked with a few clients that are on the cusp of really launching off their business and looking for investment or looking for the next level of investment. I think it's becoming a standard to say, hey, what is your cybersecurity infrastructure? And just even your infrastructure from a tech standpoint, what does it look like? Paint that picture of me of if I did hand you $50 million and now you do have 25 employees from 5. You're going to manage that. What does that roadmap look like? And even from the same point of a client base, if you double from 20 clients to 100 clients, or if you're small and you go from 1 to 10, how are you going to manage that appropriately? And what does that look like? And then to the point of how are you going to back it up? How are you going to secure it? Oh, okay, you're using X, Y, Z. Well, how are they backing up? These questions can just keep going and going and going. And then if you start mixing into it any type of HIPAA laws or pertinent client information or going down the path of like DoD compliance, any of these factors, man, it gets so complicated that for us to, for almost to sit here and talk about backing up your hard drive from your laptop is like, we have to have this conversation. It
Yeah.
has to go further than just saying, oh, well, I use a backup and I use G Suite. Great. Okay. Well, that's not cutting it. I don't see any big organization doing that, right?
Not for long would probably be my answer if they are.
And I'm not here to knock G Suite. Great,
No,
great program.
No,
but
it definitely has its time and place in the market.
correct.
But especially the free Gmail platform or any free email platform, whichever one it is, you can't be like a small dentist office or small doctor's office and transferring client data, PII, through that. That's going to get you in trouble in a hurry. So yeah, to your point, you're starting to see banks, when businesses are asking for funding, you're starting to see venture capitalists, private equity groups. They all want to know, what is your cyber plan now? They understand how critical it is for business operations and how it can undo you real quick.
Yeah, I mean, that's the piece right now. I think with COVID, and we saw small businesses go under, and there's some scary statistics that COVID have really alluded to in the small business world. But if you're going to start a company or going to really look to take it to the next level, I believe these are questions that are going to be right in the face. I think the component to how much and how secure, you don't need to go out and, if you're a 4-person firm, be spending $25,000 a month. That's not what we're referring to. But it's at least being able to answer the questions and even know that the questions are coming.
Yeah.
You would hate to be in a business review or a pitch, and they start asking questions and you don't even know how to answer them. I mean, that would derail something in the tech component, the environment, the hosting component. It have nothing to do with it, right? But it is an engine in the machine, right? Because what we're seeing is doctors, lawyers, all these. It doesn't matter what field you are. You're using a computer. You're putting information on the cloud, the internet, the web. I don't care what it is. You're doing these things, so it's going to affect. I mean, it's affecting everybody.
Absolutely. I've seen several businesses that, they enjoyed what they were doing. They're going to start. We've already got an email set up, and I'm going, doesn't work. Undo it. You just can't. There are certain credibility issues. You're going to get into some compliance issues, especially when I know some of these guys, they're consulting firms and what they're consulting in. And I'm going, this is not going to work for you. And again, it's their job to focus on what they're good at and what they're passionate about. But you need to be mindful. These things all factor in. They factor into the marketability of the company. I mean, how many times do you run a TV commercial for something and it ends in at gmail.com email address? Are you really going to call that person?
Or
You
even
probably have some unconscious bias about doing that.
I mean, even when you talk to somebody that you've met and they say, "Oh, I'm just starting out. I'm starting my own company." I mean, the first couple questions: do you have an LLC? Do you have an email address? Those type of things. Are there questions? And then it really can go with, how do you run this? I think that's really those questions come when you start adding an employee, right?
Yeah.
They really open up a whole nother bag of worms. And I think, Zach, maybe we'll save a little bit of that, because that seems like it could be a good content video. What do you do when you get an employee, right? We can talk about that, but really you have to think about those things.
Yeah. And
not only just from a security perspective, but if you're trying to scale and grow as an employee myself, sometimes I want a company that has at least, I want to be able to connect safely, use my computer in the appropriate manner, be able to get data and information, whatever it is I'm doing. I want to be able to do it appropriately. So you have to think about how you're going to support an employee. Even if it's all positive, let's just remove the scary part and the security part of saying what that employee can do with the information. But really it just comes around, how do you give them a better experience, right? Like I said, let's not dive too far into that, but that's, I think, the next biggest step for, got your Gmail account, got your LLC. It's next to, well, what do you do when you hire somebody?
Yeah, that changes everything. And, I think a lot of business owners know that. But it changes the scope of everything, that you no longer have as much control as you would like as a business owner. Um, because you're having to offer a lot of trust to your employees, but sometimes employees and even business owners alike, we're all human. We don't pay attention sometimes, and we can open up a can of worms just by not paying attention. Doesn't even have to be malicious.
Yeah.
And that's just, guarding against ourselves doing that is what a lot of these things that we're talking about are.
So let me see. If you're looking at somebody, maybe 2-3 person shop,
Mhm.
do you think that backup and recovery should be their first focus? I mean, I'm not saying, I know it's a tough way to answer it, but let's say they don't have a firewall, they're not doing anything like that, they don't have any crazy antivirus, or maybe they have like McAfee or Norton or something that they purchased over the counter. Would you think that that would be probably the most advisable thing for them to say, hey, how are you just going to back this up, right? Because like we've said, this is when proactivity meets reactivity, and you can have the best system in the world. Right now, we're seeing them still get hacked and taken over a ransom.
Yeah.
I almost feel like this is probably the first thing that a company should maybe invest a little bit money in. If you're not going to go full blown tech, hire CTO or an IT manager, whatever the heck it
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
What do you think?
The first questions I would ask are, what kind of data are you storing on your computer or your server? And secondly, what are you going to do if it's all gone?
Yeah.
Those two questions right there, that will give you your answer. Again, my goal is to never lose data. And I think that's most every business's goals these days. So your backup plan is very important there. But again, there may be some instances where, okay, I don't need a whole lot of data on that computer. That one just kept, the Christmas card mailing list or something like that. I don't know. If you're not concerned about that, but even when you get to like, a machine shop, they may have CAD drawings and inputs that go to their CNC machines. What do you do without that? That's your whole reason for operating. Can you recreate that in 2 minutes? Or do those things take a lot of time?
Yeah, what'd you pay an engineering firm to build that for you?
Exactly. That's something that has to be taken into consideration. If it is literally just, that keeps email address and phone number of customers who come through so that we can send them direct marketing. Okay, maybe you don't care so much. I'm going to care. You've retained me to watch over this stuff for you. I'm going to care. But, at the end of the day, it's your neck on the block, and it's my job to explain the concerns and problems with it. And, I will act in accordance with what we agree upon. But you're going to have a tough time selling me that data loss is an unimportant event. And then I would probably go to town on, why don't we have a firewall? Why don't we have these things in place? Again, you may be the person that completes the cycle on an identity theft for somebody. You don't have to be the one that gives all the information away, but maybe
Verify it.
Yeah, maybe you were the one that they hit your system. You didn't even know it because we have no firewall to track anybody as they come through. But maybe you're the one that gave up their elementary school name, and you just gave them a security question, the bad guys, and they completed an identity theft using that. They had 99% somewhere else, but you gave them the one they were missing. And there's no way to track. There's no way to keep these people out. We have no clue that happened. That's the stuff that your firewall would be in place for. So we want to make sure that we protect people from being the person that gives them the golden key, so to speak.
Yeah, and I want to circle back on we're harping on kind of putting all this stuff out there proactively beforehand. You can't do anything once it's over. Once it happens, it's too late. We hate that right now. This is a hot pot scenario where you got to touch the hot pot, and then people actually understand. Even if you can, I won't say sell them, but even if you can explain to them that this is something you need to do, they don't fully understand it until they get burnt or they have that skin on their hand that's impervious to the hot pot because we've helped them.
Yeah.
But they see somebody get burnt, or they came very close to getting burnt. Unfortunately, that's really what we're seeing. It's very, very driven that way. One thing I kind of want to share is we in one of the compliance levels that we've worked on, not so much just having the backups, but it's having the SOP written out and passed out through the organization in a sense, to have everybody explicitly understand what's going on. Now, yet again, this is a little bit higher of a certification. Not everybody needs to do this, but it is something to think about if you're going out in the investment world looking to scale your business or take it to the next level, or you're in one of those very, very data sensitive fields, is having an SOP around the backup so that it's explicitly written out. It makes sense on what steps and action items are taken. And then also just having people know, because let's just say you're unreachable for an hour and something does happen and Stacy, the manager, takes over for you and doesn't know your protocol that you set up with your MSP shop or your whatever it is that you're working with. And she hits the red button instead of the blue button. Now what? Right?
Yeah.
So there are these type of practices that are coming all the way down, just as if you had an SOP to hire and fire somebody. I mean, it's that rudimentary of something that we're seeing. And to meet that level of certification for this specific compliance, you would have to have that written out and distributed through your organization. So just another piece of information to think about as you divulge into how complex a backing up and where this can all go.
Yeah, and that is becoming more and more prevalent just through the business world. Like you said, to have those operating procedures documented. That proverbial bus is always out there looking. He may not have found you yet, but the proverbial bus will find somebody that will throw a wrench in this at some point in time. I mentioned on the last conversation, we're starting to see where banks are mandating these things in order for them to lend money to businesses. Yeah. They just know how critical that these things can be. And, I think it's about 60% of businesses these days that if you have a data loss event, you don't come back from it. It's just that dire at these point in time. And, there are things that can be done after the fact. If there is some sort of breach or some sort of data loss event or incident, what have you, it just gets really expensive. And there is a much lower success rate in order to retrieve all your data.
Oh, sorry, my light went out here, Zach. But no, I do agree in the sense that it comes down to, and I apologize, I cannot get my light back on.
Only so much I can help with over here, Dario.
Hey, is it too bad to continue? Can you see me at all?
I can see you a little bit.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, you need to hear my voice, and I apologize, guys. At least you know that these are authentic and real.
100%.
We are not editing them, and throw my cell phone light up here while I try to fix it. The end of the day, it comes down to protecting your organization, what you can do best, gathering information around these things. This is when proactivity hits the reactivity. I think it comes down to how can you answer to your clients, right? I mean, do you want to even have that come up? It almost seems, I don't want to say the word embarrassing, but it seems embarrassing if you were to get yourself into these situations with everything that we know. So I really think that it's.
Yeah. And from a business owner standpoint, to me, it's, am I really okay being taken out of business in its entirety by something that I can't control, but I kind of could have controlled. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, no, I'm back. I think that, yeah, it's like I said, it's almost like really embarrassing to have to talk around it and understand that, you could have prevented these things. I think your team might be like have no way to answer it. Uh, if you leave a
Yeah.
business for it, it's just so many things that are avoidable at this point that it's like, yet again, would you leave the door open and put a sign on that said welcome?
Yeah.
Take my house, and my stuff.
Yeah. Doing nothing is not really an option anymore.
People put their seatbelts on. We've learned. I think these are just some of the. And yet again, there's not like a one magic wand answer to say, hey, this is the most important thing you need to do over a firewall or NAST.
Yeah.
It's kind of why this video is way longer than just the 15-minute, excuse me, the 15-minute intro on backing up. There's so many things that need to be done, but this is one that is very avoidable and kind of easily fixed. It's not necessarily that expensive. One thing that I do want to touch base on, and yet again, guys, I do apologize about my late here. One thing I do want to touch base on here is what kind of backup do you have and how quick can you do it? You may not want to spend the money, but and I've mentioned it a few times, but if it takes you 3 days to back something up because it's the cheapest option, right? What is 3 days of not being able to work? You may have it. It may be there. It may be compressed and have to be decompressed and take time. And you may have to call somebody who's then got to go to the deep backup. There may be ways to do it. Zach kind of tells a story around sometimes with law firms and as his wife being a lawyer, what it means for them and having to hold data for so long. And then how do you create a backup around it? And let's say you scale and double your business overnight as a lawyer. Well, now you have to have that for 7 years. Are you eligible to hold all that? Are you able to hold all that?
Yep. Yeah, those are definitely pieces that come into play. The restore time is a big one. Do you want to look at somebody who just has call it a cold storage, a slow storage file backup? Or do you want to have somebody who's, got a little hot site? Hey, there you are again. Or do you want to have somebody who has a hot site that if you call and say, hey, we've got a problem, can you, reactivate and spin up a virtual machine that we can log into? Then you can be back working pretty quickly. Whereas, you've got some products that like you said, may take several days depending on internet connection, or worst case scenario, like we're seeing right now in some parts of the country. What if you don't have internet? How do you even get it back? That's something to think about too.
And here's another one. You're right. No, if you don't have an internet connection, if you don't have a way to say physically drive to your data storage center and plug in a hard drive and back it up, let's say you can't do all those things.
Yeah, you may have your
here's another one.
computer at
Here's another
home.
one.
I was going to say, you may have your computer at home, but if you can't restore data to the server that it was on, it's useless. Whereas if you've got a cloud backup that they can restore for you and just connect you to it, at least maybe 2 out of the 10 people can be working. There's
another
different
one.
ways to look at it.
Let's say you do have a backup, have it very slow of some form for the spin up speed,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want that. You say, hey guys, I'll pay for it to be done faster. What's that company going to do? Are they going to charge you the most efficient cost, or are they going to say, listen, you want to go fast? The Ferrari is expensive, right?
Yeah, there's kind of one of 2 things they're going to tell you. One is the contract that we have to abide by is this, and we're going as fast as we can. Or if you want it done faster, there is a fee associated with it.
Yeah. And look, a Humvee is useful in certain applications and a Ferrari is useful in certain applications.
Sure.
So it's not that necessarily one is better than the other. It's just knowing this information and being able to say, hey, when we have our quarterly business review, monthly, whatever it is, to divulge and say, hey, CTO, what is our backup time? What is the spin up rate on this? What can I tell a client? These are things that you should start thinking about and talking and understanding. And yet again, figuring out whether a Humvee, a minivan, a sedan, or a Ferrari is best for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're all tools in the tool belt, so to speak.
One thing there is that, yet again, and I keep using this phrase, proactivity becomes reactivity. If you build it right from the beginning, a lot of times you can avoid cost. Yes, it may be something, it will be more expensive to have a faster spin up rate, but you can avoid a lot of the cost of doing it on the front end than on the back end in the catastrophe saying, oh God, we need to, pay more money to get this done. Then you stroke a check for something that's just absurd to do it one time, right?
Yeah. Well, and
those are
then
some
you're
things to
probably
avoid.
paying the increased amount later too, because you don't realize.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. It sounds kind of malicious and bad, but I'm never saying that people should be out there in a pandemic selling water bottles for $20 a water bottle, right? That's not what we're here to do. But when you do ask people to put their back against the wall and perform under a very strenuous situation or a very fast situation, those are things you have to think about that the price is going to be reflected in. We never like to do it. We never like to say no to those things unless we really have to. But those are some of the triangle, right? You can't have all three sides. You have to pick what you want. And those are things to think about: the redundancy, the speed in which you can spin up your backup, how it's spun up. Is it compressed? Is it a full file length? Is it only backed up for 3 days? Is it backed up for the entirety of our business life?
Yeah.
Then what does that look like 15 years down the road if you double every year, right? How much memory are you storing?
Yeah.
Exactly. Better question. And lawyers have to say for 7 years. I know doctors and medical field have to save it for X amount of years. If you're not in that and you don't have certain pertinent, is there storing data too long? Could you be actually harming yourself by keeping certain old data too long and almost forgetting about it, right?
Yes.
Oh, it's just in the attic or it's in that storage unit I forgot to pay for, right? So it's that kind of concept.
Yeah, I've seen in the legal field, when 7 years in a day comes, they want to get rid of it because there may be something in that case file that, if brought back through, to a judge or something like that, could change how that case goes. The law states 7 years, and you had to make reasonable attempt to secure it. But 7 years in a day, you want it gone. And so, yeah, there are times that if you've got that hard drive that you had, that you just bought from Best Buy, Walmart, Target, wherever, and you've still got it, and somebody files a motion to compel you to produce that because they know you've got it, it may not turn out in your favor, especially if they know you have it and you don't produce it. That can be real bad. So yeah, there are times where not just making it to that threshold, but also don't go far past it too. And you want to make sure that you're doing that accurately as well.
Yeah. No, I definitely think you definitely have to clean out some of the cobwebs. You don't just want to store everything. I mean, and also from a financial standpoint, I mean, you do pay for, like I said, the way that it kind of works in a pricing standpoint, so you guys have understandings when you're out there bidding and conducting RFPs. It really comes down to the amount of storage, the cadence in which it's backed up, and then how fast you want to spin it up, right? I mean, those would kind of be the three big when pricing. And so, really, the more you store, the more you're going to pay. The faster it spins up, the more you're going to pay. The higher cadence you have with backing it up, the more you're going to pay, in a sense. And yet again, Zach and I, we recommend the 3 forms. There's ways to do things to be cost effective, ways to do things to get the premium product. But really, I think you just got to be thinking about it and saying, hey, we at least have an answer to how we're doing it. And maybe that answer is none, right? Maybe, hey, it's none.
Yep.
You're taking that first step to understanding this is a big problem.
Yeah, these are a lot of, hey, business owner, think about this kind of questions that are getting thrown back here. But that's really where the answers lie. We can come in and give recommendations based off what we've seen. But each business is different. So, there may be something that you deal with that we haven't seen out in the wild. There's always going to be that possibility, and you may need a more creative solution, we'll call it, to deal with that. But these are questions that the business owner or the person running that business has to be able to answer themselves. How frequently do we need it? Can we lose an hour of data and be okay, but not be okay if we lose 2 hours? Can we lose a week? Can we lose a month? Those are questions that I can't answer. Your business far better than most IT people will, even though we may have a good grasp on it. You still, if you've started it or you've been running it for a while, you know it far better than we do.
Yeah. And, we've had the conversation on MSP versus in-house and kind of pricing out and doing and jobbing out vendors yourself. Not for everybody, but some of the larger organizations need to have separate silos on how they back things up. The company that may be running their management and doing their initial backup may not be their deep backup. And, in all honesty,
Yeah.
When you're smaller, it helps to have a one-stop shop. But when you're really large, 10, 15,000 type for employee companies, 100,000 type employee companies,
Yeah.
you cannot put all your eggs in one basket.
No.
You simply cannot. And
Spread your
that's
risk.
seen across that's seen across the insurance field that we have experience in. I've seen that in the supply chain management field, and now you're seeing it in the tech field too. You cannot afford to have your company that's running the machine also backing up the machine. Let's say that, right? Just that company alone could have any of these ailments or any of these perils happen to them, and then you're screwed because you put your eggs in one basket. Now, there's a lot of value, yet again, not knocking MSPs. There's so much to add there for them. But it is something to think about when you're talking about the enterprise level organizations.
Well, but also think about it with an MSP. A lot of times they've spread the risk for you, because a lot of times you've got a consultancy within that MSP that says, okay, we're going to put you on the Amazon cloud for this. We're going to do a local backup here. So they may spread that risk for you and you don't have to worry about it. So there is some of that benefit to that MSP model there. But to your point, the bigger you get, you want to spread risk out as much as you can.
Yeah, when you're super large. But even for, like you said, you brought up having an MSP job things out. At the end of the day, a company like K2, we do have our own servers. We do have our own cloud environment. But there are ways that we do things that we still job out different vendors. Now we connect them all for clients, and most MSPs will connect them all for clients. But to Zach's point, you are jobbing it out. And that's where I brought up earlier is inquire about your MSP's servers, right? Like, where is the data center? Is it in the basement, right? Like, it's fine that Zach and Zach's in the office. I'm at home. I'm obviously working remote. A lot of our tech team is home working remote and doing things from their laptops. So these are possibilities, but that doesn't mean that our server is in somebody's basement. And those are things that we're very open about.
Sometimes it's the right place to be. Sometimes a basement's a good place to be.
I know. I'm knocking on the basements, but
it's the stereotypical basement there.
Correct. If the server was behind you right now, right in the office, that would not be secure. So it doesn't have to be a basement. I'm painting this horrific picture. But it really comes down to inquire. If an MSP is kind of shading around it and not sharing with you how they are operating, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be hidden on this. There's just transparency. If we're going to use a certain vendor, just going to call it out SolarWinds, for example, I'm telling you that. Here's the deal. You as an individual cannot go out and outprice an MSP. If you outgrow them in size, sure. Well, then you're not talking to MSPs to begin with. But there are value from MSPs in regards to at least a buying standpoint and then an ease of use standpoint. So you're not going to be able to outbeat that. So being transparent there is, and it doesn't, Zach and I have no qualms with it. But if your MSP is, I would be a little skeptical. Just start to dive into who the vendors are, how they're backed up, what their cadence are, what they're doing. And you'll find out real quickly if they're the right company for you.
Absolutely. And I really don't have anything to add to that. I think you succinctly tied that together, because that is what this is all about, is to help the businesses continue to thrive and to ask the right questions and get to the right places. And knowledge is power out there right now. And there's a lot of folks who are still trying to spin themselves up and understand what they need to try to understand. We don't know what we don't know in this situation a lot of times. And there are a lot of people who are still learning, and we just want to help them learn.
Yeah. And we'd hate to see a company with all the things that a small business has to deal with.
Yes.
Let's make this one easier. I mean, really, guys, if you're not having a conversation with us, have the conversation with your company. And if you don't like the answers you're getting, A, maybe you have to learn something new, or B, maybe it's time to do an RFP and look around. So, ask the right questions, be cognizant of it. You don't have to be an expert, but you start asking why or how, and you'll start really understanding if somebody knows what they're talking about. So on that note, yet again, thanks. Sorry about the lighting issue in the middle, but we want you guys to at least understand that these are candid, these are real. Like I said, Zach and I had filmed the other one before this, just kept talking and said, this is information that we should be getting out there. So yes, these are not always as organized as you'd like. They're very candid. They're very open. They're topics that we are seeing every single day, want to discuss. Might have an issue where the light goes out. Zach, I know both him and I had to answer a few messages in the middle. We're real people. We're having real conversations, and hopefully this is helping. So thank you for listening. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Stay safe out there. Until next time.
Take care.